College football continues to fly by. We're already in week 9, and I can't believe the season is already going this fast. It's just too hard to comprehend how quickly the season goes every single year. And this year feels like it's faster than the years prior. But let's get into week 9. Lots of good games coming up. And we'll start with Cal, Virginia Tech. This is a very underrated game. Cal is playing a lot of good football as of late. They kind of struggled with North Carolina in their last game, but they've been a fun team so far this year. Justin Wilcox deserves a ton of credit for what his team has done so far this year. And you have to feel good if you're a Cal fan about where this program is going this year. Now, Virginia Tech obviously fired Brent Pry earlier this year, but they're 4.5-point favorites against a Cal team that is, to a lot of people, much better than Virginia Tech. So that's something to keep an eye on. Someone knows something that maybe we don't. That being said, I think that Cal is just the better team. It's going to be tough. These cross-country trips are definitely challenging. And Cal has been a team that's battled through adversity before. So I'm going to go with Cal in this one. I think that they're going to be able to win this game. Boise State at Nevada. 22.5-point favorites are the Boise State Broncos. They had the big win over UNLV this last weekend, and their offense put up a ton of points. Might be a little bit of a different story in this one, but we'll see. Maddox Madsen looked really good against UNLV early in that game. The defense had some struggles though. So how do they handle more mobile quarterbacks that they'll face throughout the season? I don't think that there are teams remaining on their schedule that provide what Anthony Colandrea provided to UNLV and gave to the Boise State Broncos in terms of issues. But I think that Boise State is still figuring some things out on defense. Now, Nevada is not a great football team, but they definitely have some players to keep an eye on in terms of could provide some problems for Boise State. That being said, Boise State is going to win this game. I don't have any concerns about them taking care of business here. UCLA at Indiana. UCLA continues their hot streak, and this is going to be probably the end of it, honestly. I don't think anybody's picking UCLA to win this as a 24.5-point underdog. Indiana is on an absolute tear right now. They are playing really well. Fernando Mendoza looks really good, over 1,700 yards, 21 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. It's a big reason why he is considered the best quarterback in college football by a lot of people. Definitely plenty of competition, but there are a lot of people that really like what he's doing. Kurt Cignetti is doing incredible things with a program that I don't think a lot of people thought would ever be in this spot. If you followed Indiana football, you probably didn't ever think that Indiana could have this level of success. Now they're a top 3 team in college football. And even though UCLA is off to a good start since they've fired their head coach, they've had a good string of games. That probably comes to an end here. I'm going to say it does come to an end here. I will go with Indiana. It's a fun story for UCLA. There's still plenty of excitement for the rest of the year for them to win games, but Indiana's going to take care of business, probably get them back to reality. Ole Miss at Oklahoma. Oklahoma's a 4.5-point favorite at home. They had a 26-7 win over South Carolina last week. Ole Miss is coming off that tough loss to Georgia. The one thing you saw with Ole Miss is that they proved that they can play with anyone. They proved that they can compete with the best of the best. Now, they kind of disappeared in the fourth quarter, and that's a little bit of a concern, but they were in that game against Georgia. They only lost by 8, and Georgia needed to have a good quarter to be able to do that. So if you're Ole Miss, you should still feel pretty good about this game. And the fact that they're underdogs gives them motivation to prove people wrong once again. I think that I had some concerns about them going into last week. Their record maybe wasn't as legitimate as I thought it might have been, but they're a good team. They're still a very good football team. And even though they lost last week, there is plenty to like about what Trinidad Chambliss did in Lane Kiffin's system. Kewan Lacey looked really good. The defense obviously had its struggles, but I think that they're going to have plenty of success against an Oklahoma offense that honestly has not been overly impressive. I think John Mateer has to take a little bit of the risk that he takes and kind of dial that down a little bit. I don't love some of the decisions he makes, but it's clear that he is fully healthy and there's no concerns with his hand, as we saw against Texas. That was a game that you didn't really see a lot of great mental decisions, but the physical part of it is not an issue. So last week you saw him kind of, once again, there were some good things about it, some not so good things. So if the Oklahoma offense can provide some stability. The defense has been playing lights out at times. So you can't really rely on the defense the entire time. You need your offense to do its part eventually. And against a team like Ole Miss, it's going to be a really fun battle between Ole Miss's offense and Oklahoma's defense. I think that's going to be a really fun matchup to watch. And I think it's going to be fun to see how this one turns out. I am going to go with an Ole Miss team that is playing with a lot of confidence offensively. I think that they're able to put up enough points on Oklahoma. Their defense can get enough stops against this Sooners offense. I don't trust Oklahoma's offense as much as I do Ole Miss, and I think that's going to be the difference in this game. Next, we go to the Group of 5 game of the week, USF at Memphis. USF is a 3.5-point favorite and is coming off a few strong performances offensively where they put up a ton of points. Now, turnovers have been a problem, but this is still an offense that's able to rally from their mistakes and put up a ton of points. Memphis might have gotten caught looking ahead to this game. They lost to UAB last week, which pretty much got rid of their, I would say they're probably eliminated from the college football playoff at this point. This is a game, though, if there is any hope with them getting there, this is the game that they can do that. This is the game that they can resurrect those hopes. Now, how do you do that? You're going to have to go against an USF offense that is dangerous. Byron Brown is one of the best quarterbacks in college football and does not get the love that he deserves. Because he plays in the Group of 5, he doesn't get the recognition because most people aren't really paying attention to USF or the Group of 5 for that matter. And I understand that to a certain degree, but Byron Brown is worth watching. He's electric as a passer. He's really good as a runner. He has a great frame at 225 pounds. It's tough to tackle him downfield. Byron Brown is a big reason why USF has had so much success. And we've talked about this week in and week out coming into this season as well. If Byron Brown could find his form from 2 years ago, you knew that this team had a great chance to have a ton of success. And this is a team that has done that. They upset the Florida Gators. They're 6-1. They are on a great path to get to the college football playoff. Now, this is a game that they have to win. So Brown has to take care of the football. We've seen a couple of games where turnovers have been a factor in the offense and have limited the amount of damage that they can do. Fortunately for them, they played defenses that weren't able to stop them on any other drive. They essentially were beating themselves with those turnovers. Memphis is not the same team. Now, Memphis's defense is probably better than, say North Texas and definitely even Charlotte. But the difference here is that USF can still score some points, but Memphis's defense is going to be able to create more stops than those other teams. And they have an offense that can be explosive as well. So this is a dangerous game for USF if they're not careful. If they continue turning the ball over, Memphis might find a way to pull off the upset. They did that against Arkansas. They can do it again against this USF team. So how do they prevent that? Taking care of the football, keeping the ball in Byron Brown's hands, even though he's been one of the players making those mistakes, that's still going to be a good strategy for this team. Now, at the same time, you're going to have to get the rushing game going a little bit more. You have a good amount of depth at the running back position, so you're going to have to get those guys involved as well. Distribute the ball as much as possible so you're limiting the hits that Brown takes. You also want to see Chaz Nimrod and Keyshawn Singleton continue doing what they've done this year. The wide receivers do what they've done this year, which has been be explosive. Jeremiah Coger has been involved as well, averaging 21.6 yards per catch. Singleton's actually, of those three, the lowest one in yards per catch at 16.5. So that's the definition of explosive. They have the ability to create explosive plays. And if you are USF, that's going to be a great way to make sure that you're getting the ball downfield and pulling away from Memphis. This is a USF team that can pretty much have their way with the American. They can score points on anyone, and Memphis is not going to be any different because that's how good USF is. Now, on the Memphis side of things, turnovers are also going to be a part of this. You have to take care of the football because we've seen what amount of damage this USF team can do. North Texas didn't capitalize on USF's mistakes, and we've seen other teams turn the ball over against South Florida, and they ran away with it. And this is a Bulls team that can make this game an absolute blowout in a hurry. So you have to take care of the football. You have to make sure you're being smart with the things that you do. And you also have to take advantage, be opportunistic, take advantage of the mistakes that USF makes and make them pay. Turn those turnovers into points. That's going to be a big key. Now, Brendan Lewis has to be the steadying force that we've seen him be. The Arkansas game was the Brendan Lewis game in a way, because we saw him be poised in the big moments and make the right decision. Now, Memphis can make explosive plays themselves. I mean, it feels like every time I look up, Sutton Smith is breaking off a big play, and not just like a 5 to 10 yard run. He's breaking off a 50+ yard run. It feels like he has been a very big time player for them when they need him the most. And it feels like in the clutch moments, he's been a big reason why they've had so much success. Now, Lewis, again, is maybe the forgotten part of this, but this is still a guy that's a factor in the rushing attack as well. He has 440 yards, averaging 5.1 yards per carry, and has 7 touchdowns. Now, Greg Durazes is also part of this as well. We saw him deal with injuries early in the year, and now it looks to be like he's back to his normal self, and that's a dangerous weapon to have as well. So again, the weapons for Memphis are just as good as USF's, and that could be dangerous as well. It's just going to come down to the defense. Again, how opportunistic can you be? Can you create turnovers? Right now, Memphis has done that at times, and that's a way to keep them in this game. Because if you can keep USF's offense off the field, then you're in good position to potentially win this football game. That's what you need to do. You need to take care of the football. You need to turn the turnovers for USF into points. Create those points off turnovers. That's going to be a big key. Now, the loss last week for Memphis was obviously disappointing. You don't want to see that if you're a Memphis fan. However, maybe they were focusing too much on this one. Now, this is where you really have to show that if you were focused on it, you got to win this game somehow, some way. Doing so is going to be easier said than done, but this is going to be a fun one. USF is a 3.5 point favorite. I think that they're just too good for Memphis right now. And if Memphis does win, there are some big concerns about the American potentially getting into the playoff, more so than they were before this week. I still think that they're the best conference of the group of 5, but there are plenty of competition, or plenty of teams, I should say, that are competition to the American for that spot. So that's something to keep an eye on if Memphis does win. I am going to go with USF. I think that they are just the better team, and they're going to get the job done here. SMU at Wake Forest. SMU is a 3.5 point favorite. They're coming off that massive win over Clemson, and now they have to prepare for a completely different test. Winning at Wake Forest isn't the most challenging thing, but it's more challenging than I think people realize. And Wake Forest is playing with a lot of confidence. I like how this team is playing, and I enjoy watching what Jake Dickert is doing with that program. They're playing a lot better than I think people realize, and SMU knows that they could have a big test on their hands if they're not careful. Now, if you're SMU, you want to get off to a fast start. Kevin Jennings has to be comfortable in the pocket. We've seen what he can do when he gets that time, and they need to put this game away quick, because as long as you let Wake Forest hang around, they have the potential to pull off an upset. I am going to go with SMU, though. I really like what Robbie Ashford is doing in this offense. Damon Claiborne is one of the better running backs that nobody really talks about, but I think that SMU is going to be able to slow them down and kind of pull away early where they don't have to worry about a potential upset. Another big game in the Big 12, not as big as maybe we once anticipated, but Kansas State at Kansas. Kansas is a 2.5 point favorite, and this is a team that is really fun to watch. And Kansas State had its struggles early, but they look like they're kind of bouncing back in a way. Avery Johnson is going to play a big role in that. And Avery Johnson is a really fun quarterback when he's playing with confidence. When his arm is a major factor in this offense, they are a good football team. They are a fun football team. And that's one thing to keep an eye on. If he is comfortable and making big time throws, this offense is dangerous. And I think we've kind of forgotten about Kansas State in a way, because of their struggles early on. We knew that this was a team that had high expectations, and I think people kind of forgot about why we had high expectations for them when they started losing football games early. Now, the nice thing about college football is there are teams that are going to bounce back, and Kansas State is one of those teams. Kansas State has the ability to turn things around here. They're 3-4. It's not like their season's lost, and they're showing that. Avery Johnson has looked, I think, up and down overall, and that's kind of something we worried about coming into the year. How consistent could he be as a passer? He's completing nearly 63% of his passes, over 1,500 yards, 13 touchdowns. The one thing that he's done really well is only 2 interceptions. He's been very good at taking care of the football through the air and not giving it to the other team. So you have to at least respect that. And this is a team that's going to be really tough to stop if Avery Johnson is playing at his peak. Now, the rushing part of it, I'd like to see him do that a little bit more. Again, I think he can be a good passer, but I don't want this team to focus solely on, we need you to be a good passer. And maybe that's the long game. Maybe that's part of why he's gotten better, is they spent the first part of the season turning him into more of a proficient passer where the offense benefits long term, because then he starts figuring things out and then he can use his legs. I don't think Avery Johnson is looking to run on every play, but I would like him to utilize his legs more. I'd like to see him take off because he's so dangerous with the football in his hands. And if something's not open, I get trying to be patient, but sometimes he's overly patient and it kind of takes away his opportunity to run. I'd like to see him still be patient, but then when he sees an opportunity to take off, just do that. Your offense is so much more dangerous when he's involved in that rushing attack, because right now you can't trust Dylan Edwards to stay healthy. Joe Jackson has been all right, but the rushing attack will benefit if Avery Johnson can contribute a little bit more. That being said, this passing attack, I think, is going to be even more dangerous if he's able to consistently be that passer. Jace Brown has been the lone consistent player for this offense week in and week out. Now, his numbers aren't anything incredible, but he's still been a fun player to watch. And it feels like in the biggest moments, Jace Brown's the guy they turn to, and he's the guy that makes those plays. And Kansas is going to be aware of that. So how do you get other guys involved? We've seen in the past Jaron Tibbs, Garrett Oakley, Jerron Bradley. Those guys have all been factors. How do you get the ball into their hands more often so that teams can't tee off on Jace Brown? Same thing with Kansas. They know what Kansas State wants to do in the passing attack. How do you get him out of that groove? How do you get him out of the game where Avery Johnson has to show that he can go to his second and third reads? Because Kansas is going to dare him to throw and beat them with his arm, and he has to show that he can do that. Now, on the Kansas side of things, the one fun story that we're not talking about enough, in my opinion, is the development of Jalen Daniels in his final season with Kansas, completing nearly 70% of his passes, over 1,700 yards, 18 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. This is another guy that we talked about coming into this year. How would he be as a passer? How consistent and efficient would he be with his arm? Can he get the ball downfield to the big time players that he needs to hit? And who are those big time players going to be? But Jalen Daniels has not had to use his legs a ton in big moments. I think that he's still capable of it, but he's run the ball 65 times. Now, again, some of that is with sacks, but 199 yards and 1 touchdown. So they are not expecting him to be a big time contributor in the rushing attack consistently. Now, having guys like LaShawn Williams and Daniel Highshaw this year have given him kind of that relief where he doesn't have to do everything himself. Now, the other thing we talked about is who are going to be his go-to guys. You lose the number of players that you lose at wide receiver. We knew coming into this year that Kansas was going to have questions about wide receiver. Emmanuel Henderson has lived up to the hype. We talked about the Alabama transfer a lot, and we knew that he was extremely talented and could be the best wide receiver on this roster. He has done everything to live up to that tag as well. 31 catches, 530 yards, 17.1 yards per catch, and 4 touchdowns. Now, we've seen other guys step up as well. Bowden Groen at the tight end position has been solid. Cam Pickett, Levi Wentz, we've seen guys help him, but he is clearly the best wide receiver. He's the most explosive wide receiver, and Jalen Daniels really likes throwing the ball to him downfield. This offense has been fun because of those two developments. The passing attack has been a bright spot on a team that we weren't sure what it was going to be. If we saw the passing attack take a step, you knew that there was a chance this could be a really fun team in 2025. This is going to be very interesting. I think that this is a team that has the ability to continue being explosive, and Kansas State is playing better. So this is going to be a tough game for sure. I think this is going to be a back and forth game, and one that could feature a lot of points. I think that these defenses at times have been good at getting stops, but I also think that there are times where they just kind of take breaks in a way of stopping people, not necessarily on the field. They're obviously trying, but these two offenses have the potential to just continue moving the ball down the field, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in this one. We'll see if this is a group of on either side that can get stops against these quarterbacks, because I know that it's going to be tough to get stops on either quarterback because they've taken steps as passers. And oh, by the way, don't forget about their legs. I'm going to go with Kansas. They're 2.5-point favorites. They're at home. It's going to be a packed stadium. I like the Jayhawks. I think they're going to get the job done, and it's going to be a big win for this program. Underrated Sun Belt game this weekend is going to be App State at Old Dominion. Old Dominion is a 13.5-point favorite coming off that tough loss against James Madison where they could not get a stop. Now, App State is capable of putting up points as well, but I think that Old Dominion is going to have a little bit of a bounce back game, especially defensively. Now, Colton Joseph got off to a strong start on offense. He and Trey Brown were tearing apart that James Madison defense in the first half, but the second half was a completely different story. They were dropping passes, they weren't moving the ball, and James Madison just tore apart that defense. Now, Old Dominion's defense is going to bounce back, like I said, and even though J.J. Cole has been playing really well for App State, this Old Dominion team is just a much better team. They're going to get the job done here. Auburn at Arkansas. Auburn is a 1.5-point favorite on the road, and Hugh Freeze is still the head coach. That's a very interesting development. We talked about how he could potentially get fired this past weekend. That wasn't the case, and now he is still with the team here and is still going to be the head coach. And it's going to be tough to win on the road at an Arkansas team that appears to be playing with a lot more confidence than they had been before they fired Sam Pittman. Now, Bobby Petrino, it appears to be his audition for the head coaching opportunity at Arkansas, and so far it's going really well. Now, it helps when you have a quarterback like Taylor Green who can pretty much carry your team. Over 1,900 yards passing, 17 touchdowns, 589 yards on the ground, and 5 touchdowns as well. Mike Washington, huge addition in the transfer portal. He's been really good at running back, but this offense has to go against this Auburn defense. Auburn's defense continues to be a reason why they're in games. The offense just continues to struggle. Now, it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the season plays out for both teams. There's a lot to monitor in terms of storylines. Is Hugh Freeze going to keep his job? Do these wide receivers who have been underutilized for Auburn continue to be patient with Jackson Arnold or whoever's going to be the quarterback? That's going to be a big question, because if they're not going to get the ball, it's not going to be a surprise when they transfer and go somewhere else. Now, in terms of winning this game, this is going to be a very entertaining one. I think Arkansas is going to pull off the upset just based on how they're playing. Auburn feels like they're kind of on that teetering point of not giving up, but there's going to be some adversity that they run into, and eventually they're just going to fold. And Arkansas feels like they're a team right now that is playing with a lot of motivation for their coach. They're playing a little bit more free, and that might give them the advantage here. I think this is going to be a close game, and if Arkansas can continue putting up points, eventually I think Auburn's going to cave, and then maybe that's when Hugh Freeze is out the door. Utah State at New Mexico is not a game that a lot of people are going to talk about, but this is super underrated. I think Utah State is playing phenomenal under Bronco Mendenhall, and New Mexico is playing a lot better than people expected under Jason Eck. Bryson Barnes for Utah State is one of the better quarterbacks in the group of 5, and he's been really fun to watch this year. 1,600 yards, 13 touchdowns. You look at what he did last week against San Jose State. He's playing with a lot of confidence, and his arm has been a big reason why. He's playing with a lot of confidence. Like I said, he's playing with decisiveness of where to go with the football. He's taking care of the football, and he's also running as well. He's been really fun to watch, and even though New Mexico has been better than expected, I am going to go with Utah State to win this game. Then we head into the afternoon slate, and we have Alabama at South Carolina. South Carolina is another one of those teams that people are starting to wonder, is this the end of the Shane Beamer era at South Carolina? This could be a game to keep an eye on with that. Alabama's playing really well as of late. Again, the loss to Florida State continues to be a puzzling one, and this is a team that looks completely different than that week 1 loss. Ty Simpson has been phenomenal. Last week, not his best game, but still a solid performance. Ryan Williams, also a solid performance. We saw him making some tough catches. We saw him catching with his hands instead of his body. Maybe that's a development that continues for the rest of the season, but this is a passing attack that's dangerous and a defense that is playing a lot better and probably doesn't get talked about enough in terms of this team's success. We'll see if that continues this week. For South Carolina, I don't really know what to expect from this team. How do you keep this game close? How do you get your offense involved? Lenora Sellers has been extremely underwhelming so far this year. And this is an offense that has not lived up to expectations. We thought this could be an explosive group. It has not been. The defense had some issues coming into the year, some questions that they needed to address. And so far, there have been some that have been answered, but also some things that have not. So how do you compete in a game like this? You're trying to answer a lot of questions, and I don't necessarily know if you have those answers. And for obvious reasons, that's why we're going to go with Alabama. I think they're just the better team, and it's going to be tough for South Carolina to kind of keep pace in this one. College game day is going to Missouri at Vanderbilt, and this is a very underrated game and a very fun game. Two teams that are playing with a lot more confidence and a lot better than people realize, and it's going to be a fun one. Two teams that are both 6-1 and both playing above, like I said, where people anticipated. Both of them have a lot to do with their quarterback play. Now, for Missouri, Bo Pribula was a big question mark coming into this year. Not because he didn't have talent, but because we didn't know how well he was going to be able to play against SEC competition. He's the backup for Penn State, transfers to the Tigers, and joins a team that had a lot of new faces taking over. You had new running backs taking over. You had new wide receivers entering into the picture, and you had a new quarterback. There were a lot of questions about this offense. A lot of those have been answered. A large part of that has been Bo Pribula. So over 1,600 yards, 11 touchdowns, now 7 interceptions. Hasn't been great, but still a pretty solid quarterback overall. 210 yards as a runner, 5 touchdowns. Arguably the biggest reason for their success, though, is getting Ahmad Hardy from ULM. 840 yards. He's averaging 6 yards per carry and 11 touchdowns. He has been phenomenal for Missouri this year. Now, part of that also has to do with the complementary play of Jamal Roberts. This has been a fun tandem to watch. Now, Hardy is clearly the better of the two, but Roberts is someone you can't sleep on either. He's averaging 7.3 yards per carry, and he's been a big contributing factor as well. So this is a team that has a lot to be excited about. And even though you have one loss, they still played really well in that loss and they kept it competitive. So I think that you're still in a good spot. You're still in a good position to be competitive against a good Vanderbilt team, and a Vanderbilt team that we're going to start talking about as a contender in the SEC. Now, the passing attack, Kevin Coleman Jr. is another addition in the transfer portal that's been really good for this team. Leads the team in catches with 44. He also leads the team with 449 yards. So he has been really fun to watch. Marquise Johnson has shown some explosive plays at times. He's been really good. Brett Norfleet has been a touchdown machine at times as well. So this is an offense that's full of playmakers. Oh, by the way, the offensive line has kind of lived up to the expectations we had about them. As long as they've been healthy, they've been pretty good. So that's going to be a big part of it as well. The one thing we knew about this team coming into this year is that this defense was going to be a problem, and that has been the case, especially last week against Auburn. The confidence that they played with, the disruptiveness that they played with. This is a fun group, and it all starts up front. Zion Young is playing as one of the best players in college football at his position. The addition of Damon Wilson in the transfer portal was also great. You've seen them be extremely disruptive, and you've seen the guys around them step their game up as well. You brought in Josiah Trotter, huge addition for that team. He's been playing well, and the interior defensive line has been steady. We don't talk about guys like Chris McClellan enough, but he's been steady for this team. So if you're going to win a game against Vanderbilt, it's going to be because you are able to play with a toughness, with a physicality, because Vanderbilt is a tough as nails team that's going to try to win the physical game, and we've seen them do that this year. If they're able to continue playing at that level, they're going to be good. If Missouri is able to match that intensity and match that physicality, then they're going to feel pretty good about what they can do. And last week, we kind of saw that. The offense struggled to put up points against Auburn. You had kind of a little bit of a precursor to what this game is going to be. Vanderbilt has plenty of players that can make life difficult for whoever they're facing. And Missouri saw that last week. I'm very curious what kind of adjustments they make to compete in this one. Now, if you're going to the Vanderbilt side of things, this has been an incredible story throughout the entire year. Clark Lee had a vision, and I think even the people within the Vanderbilt program that weren't in the building, the fan base and whatnot, there were probably some skeptics about what this team could be. I think that's all gone. I think we know that Vanderbilt is a good football team, and last week we saw that. To beat a team like LSU, even though LSU is not what we thought they were going to be, that kind of tells you what you need to know about this team. They're legit, they're a fun team, and everybody in that program has bought into this vision. And it helps when you have a quarterback like Diego Pavia, who's kind of a sensation in college football. He's been a really fun player to talk about. He's a fun player to watch, and he embodies the toughness and the vision that Clark Lee had. He's a guy that was kind of overlooked, not kind of, he was overlooked coming into college. And he comes to Vanderbilt, and there's so much doubt about him and what he can do. And all he has done is win football games and exceed expectations. This year, he's thrown for almost 1,600 yards, 15 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. So even though the one thing with his passing that I'll point out, I think with his personality, you think, okay, this guy is tough. He's going to be really fun to watch. He's going to drive up morale, and he's going to get our toughness to a certain level. I think with him, you kind of anticipate, okay, with that, we're probably going to see some turnovers, some reckless decisions, and also maybe some throws that he just can't make that get picked off. That has not been the case. He looks like he is as dialed in as any quarterback in the country, and he doesn't make the mistakes. He doesn't put the ball in harm's way a ton, and he's just really good at what they want him to be. He's also really good as a runner. 77 carries for 438 yards, 5.7 yards per carry, and 4 touchdowns. He is the biggest reason why they've had success. Now, he's also had guys step up around him. So Cedric Alexander, McKellen Young, you've had guys play really well at the running back position. In terms of the passing attack, we knew what Eli Stowers was going to be. We had questions about the rest. Junior Sherrill, Trey Richardson, Richie Hoskins, Cole Spence, all 4 of those guys have stepped up at moments and given this Vanderbilt passing attack some depth that maybe we didn't anticipate having coming into the year, or at least they didn't anticipate having coming into this year. That's been really nice, and it's helped them be in games and be able to score on drives where you need a score. You need to be able to put up a touchdown or whatever it might be. That's been fun. Now, the defense is where we knew this was going to be a fun group. You returned a ton of talent, and we knew that the defensive line was going to play a huge role, and so far they have. So far, they have played a massive role in this success. They've been disruptive. They've made sound plays, and that's a testament to what Clark Lee envisioned for this team. We knew that this team could be really good defensively, and we've seen that at times as well. So overall, this entire team has just been a tough team, a team that comes together and doesn't let the moment dictate their attitude or their feelings towards the game. When the moment gets big, they just go back to what they do. And I've been talking about that for a little while now. Yes, they have the one loss, but even in that game, if they're going to lose, it's going to be because teams are more talented than them. And when certain players need to make plays that only they can make, that happens. Vanderbilt still, despite their success, does not have the most athletic 5-star, 4-star kids. They don't have the best talent, but it also hasn't mattered. They play with a discipline and with fundamentals that a lot of other teams don't, and that's been a big reason why they've had success. So when you're looking at how you're going to pick this game, it feels like Vanderbilt has the advantage here. Now, Missouri is a very dangerous team as well, but this is where I think Vanderbilt gets to show that another opportunity to have them show that they are a contender, that they can win at a high level. And that's where I'm going to go with this game. Vanderbilt is going to win at home. There's an excitement, there's a buzz around the program. And even though Missouri's playing really well, I think that Vanderbilt's going to take care of this game here and come away with the win. BYU at Iowa State. Now, BYU is coming off a big win in a rivalry game against Utah. This is going to be one to pay attention to. But the one thing that I will say is that I'm probably done doubting BYU and what they could be. I'm kind of done doubting what this team is because of Kalani Sitake. It's clear now that Kalani Sitake is, and we probably knew this before, that he's a good coach. He knows what he's doing, and he's a big reason why these teams of his continue winning at a high level. This year is no different. You have a freshman quarterback that has taken over, and he's looked steady. They've pretty much told him, like, hey, you're gonna do the reads that we give you, take care of things, be smart with the football, and don't put the ball in harm's way. And Bear Bachmeier it's still weird to see him wear 47, but it's still fun to watch him take care of things. And it's hard to remember that he's a freshman because he makes so many smart decisions and doesn't misuse the trust that he's given. Now, playing at Iowa State is going to be tough. Winning on the road at Iowa State is always difficult. Now, Iowa State is kind of heading in the wrong direction. They were off to a strong start, and as of recently, they're heading in the wrong direction. So if there's a team that can go into Iowa State and win, it's going to be the BYU Cougars. So I'm going to stop doubting BYU finally, and I'm going to give them the win here. But if they do lose, it's because of that thing that I mentioned. The road test at Iowa State is always difficult. But for now, I think BYU is able to take care of it. Illinois at Washington. Now, Washington played Michigan tough last week, couldn't get the win. Illinois has been a fun team to watch as well. They just obviously haven't had the success that maybe they wanted. And these are two teams that need this win in a big way. Washington is looking to have Damon Williams have a big game. Luke Altmaier has been a steady hand for Illinois. This is a fun quarterback matchup if you like that. Same thing with the running backs. Caden Fegan and Jonah Coleman are really fun to watch. You also have two very underrated wide receivers in Hank Beatty and Denzel Boston. So if you like teams that you're kind of looking for, kind of those under the radar teams, Illinois Washington is the game for you. Now, in terms of who's going to win this game, it's at Washington. I'm going to pick the hometown team to win this one. I think Damon Williams is just the difference here. He's too tough for Illinois' defense to stop. Minnesota at Iowa. Iowa is a 7.5 point favorite, and that's really surprising. I think that there are some that have it at 9 as well. So it's clearly someone thinks something of this Iowa team where they're a much better team than Minnesota. I think that line is way too high, so we'll see what that looks like later in the week. Minnesota is playing a lot better than I think a lot of people realize. Iowa is coming off the win over Penn State. Kind of an ugly win, but you're not going to apologize for that. Penn State's absolutely reeling. Minnesota is coming off that big win over Nebraska, so maybe there's a little bit of a letdown factor here. Iowa is a tough place to win, and it feels like at times PJ Fleck has struggled. Now, Drake Lindsey is going to dictate how Minnesota plays. We've seen him be consistent and take care of the football, and the rushing attack kind of had a revival last week to help him out. Darius Taylor, if he's able to run the ball against this Iowa defense, that's going to help. Now, Drake Lindsey has to be able to handle this road test. This is going to be one of the toughest tests he plays. Iowa is going to be a difficult place to win, and they're going to have to figure out their own issues as well. But they're going to lean on that home field advantage for the time being and maybe get a couple of mistakes out of this Minnesota offense. Mark Gronowski still has to play better. I don't think that's really changed. And the one thing with him is that you've seen some flashes of what he could be as a consistent player. The dual threat ability is obviously dangerous. The defense at times has looked good. So in terms of who's going to win this game, if the home field advantage works for Iowa, then they're going to win this. However, I think that 7.5 points is disrespectful to Minnesota. I'm going to pick the Golden Gophers to surprise a lot of people this weekend. NC State at Pitt. Pitt is a 6.5 point favorite and a fun team to watch ever since Mason Heinschel has taken over. Now, NC State is a difficult team to beat. If CJ Bailey is playing with a ton of confidence, you feel pretty good about what NC State can do. If Heinschel plays better than he did last week, Pitt's probably going to win this game. I probably would be careful about how Pitt plays offensively. I think NC State is a very dangerous team, but you also have more talent, I think, on Pitt overall. So I'm going to take Pitt to win this game and beat NC State. Another big Group of 5 matchup is going to be San Diego State at Fresno State. These are two teams that are playing very, very confidently, and San Diego State's been arguably the surprise of the Mountain West. Now, Fresno State also has a strong case for that. San Diego State 5-1, Fresno State 5-2. Quarterback play has been a big reason why. Jaden Denegal has been really good for Sean Lewis's squad, and he's been fun to watch so far. Over 1,000 yards passing, 7 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. You've also seen the rushing attack help him out as well. You've had a 3-headed monster in that rushing attack. Byron Cardwell, Lucky Sutton has been the big time player. 105 carries, 531 yards, 6 touchdowns. Christian Washington, 49 carries, 201 yards, 2 touchdowns. Denegal, though, has been that consistent player. You'd like to see his production get up a little bit, but he has been that consistent passer for this team. And Jordan Napier at wide receiver has benefited from that. 553 yards and 2 touchdowns to lead the team. He's been really fun to watch, and that's kind of what we expected from a Sean Lewis offense. You knew that Sean Lewis had the offensive side all figured out, and you knew that that was going to have to take a step if this team wanted to win. So San Diego State is very much in a good position because of Sean Lewis and because he identified the right players to be able to come in and play at a higher level. Now, San Diego State is a 3.5-point favorite. How they swing that even more in their favor is going to lie on the defense. This is a tough Fresno State offense to stop, but Fresno State knows that at times they've struggled with turnovers. And this is a San Diego State team that's defense has been a surprise in a way. You've seen San Diego State come into this year. You knew that the offense was in good hands. The question for Sean Lewis was, how good can your defense be? You knew that you had Trey White, and you knew that there were other guys that could potentially step up, but Trey White was the lone bright spot that a lot of people knew. You've seen guys step up around him, and in a way, Trey White has kind of been an irrelevant point at times. He's been part of this defense, but not the sole contributing factor. And in a way, that's what you needed. Now, White is still a pretty good player. 27 carries, 27 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. He has carried the team last year, but this year has been a different story. His teammates have stepped up where he doesn't need to make every play. Owen Chambliss has been really good at linebacker. Chris Johnson at cornerback is leading the team in interceptions. If you're going to make this an upset for Fresno State, you have to ensure that that defense doesn't get to your quarterback, that you take care of the football, because San Diego State has shown, specifically looking at the Cal game, that if you turn the ball over, you are in for a long, long night. So Fresno State, take care of the football if you want to win this. If you're San Diego State, just rediscover that energy you had against Cal. Whatever it was, it worked, and you need to do that again. For Fresno State, a lot of the pressure lies on E.J. Warner. I think he has been all over the place, but we've seen what this offense could be when he's playing consistently, when he takes care of the football. Over 1,400 yards with 10 touchdowns, but he also has 9 interceptions. The rushing attack, when he was struggling, has been kind of that consistent force. So Bryson Donaldson and Rayshawn Luke deserve a lot of credit for the team's success as well, because they have been a reason why they haven't struggled nearly as much as they should have. There were games that they probably should have lost, but the reason why they didn't is because the rushing attack carried them from there. Donaldson has 405 yards and 3 touchdowns. Luke, 384 yards and 5 touchdowns. Luke's also averaging 6.5 yards per carry. Now, the passing attack hasn't really been a one-man show by any means, which we kind of anticipated. I will say Josiah Freeman has been a little bit more of that go-to guy, but Richie Anderson is right behind him. So you had guys that you knew could potentially step up, and you've seen multiple players enter into that discussion. Now, Matt Entz knew that his defense was going to be pretty good. And I think at times we've seen this group have success, but we've also seen them struggle. They're kind of middle of the road. They're giving up almost 24 points a game, but it helps when your offense has been as good as it's been at times. And again, this is more of an opportunistic defense than an elite defense, but sometimes that's what you need. It's kind of what you need to be able to win some of these games. And you've seen what Fresno State can do when their defense takes away the football. You have multiple guys with 2 interceptions. You have a ton of players that have been disruptive this year, and it's really going to come down to how well can you stop this San Diego State offense. how are you able to slow them down? Because this San Diego State offense can be explosive, and if you're not taking care of the football, there's a lot of pressure on this defense to deliver. And so far this year, Fresno State has been kind of hit or miss with that. So how do you make that so you don't lose control of this game? Because if you're going to beat San Diego State, you have to do something that you've not done consistently. And for that reason, I'm going to go with San Diego State. I think that they're just the more consistent team right now. But playing on the road at Fresno State, Mountain West feels a little bit out of control right now, which means that anybody can win. I'm going to trust Sean Lewis for now, but I wouldn't be surprised if Matt Entz and Fresno State can come away with this win either. FAU at Navy. Navy is a 15.5-point favorite, and if they're able to do what I think they're capable of, then they should have no problem covering that spread. Now, FAU made things a little bit difficult for USF early last week, but ultimately couldn't hang on. And this Navy offense is a little bit, it's kind of similar to USF in terms of how well they can score, but it's also a unique test that FAU has to prepare for. So I'm going to go with Navy here. I think they're going to be able to take care of what they need to take care of. They're going to create some turnovers and make this game a relatively easy win. Baylor at Cincinnati. Cincinnati is a 5.5-point favorite, and if there's a team in danger of being upset, it's Cincinnati, purely because Baylor's offense is capable of scoring at a rate that Cincinnati has to find a way to match. And Cincinnati's been able to put up points too, but if you make this game into a shootout, I don't know if Cincinnati's necessarily equipped to handle that. That being said, defensive stops will be a big key. Whichever team gets more defensive stops, obviously is going to be a big factor, but I think that Cincinnati has been the better team, obviously, and there's a reason why they're sitting near the top of the Big 12, but Baylor is a very dangerous team. Sawyer Robertson, when he's playing well, this offense is dangerous. So how do you win this game if you're Cincinnati? That's going to be a big question, is taking care of the football and taking advantage of a Baylor defense that hasn't been great, hasn't been as good as maybe you'd want it to be if you're Dave Aranda. This is a big one. I am going to go with Baylor, though. I think that Cincinnati had some struggles last week against Oklahoma State early, and if Baylor can take advantage of that, they can potentially win this game. Texas at Mississippi State. Texas is a 6.5-point favorite, and they continue their struggles, and Mississippi State is looking for another surprising win, and doing it at home against a Texas offense that is not looking good could potentially be the way to do that. Eventually, Texas's defense is going to break. Eventually, they're going to say, why are we even doing this? Our offense isn't doing anything for us, and they can't score as much as they want either. So Mississippi State could potentially find themselves in a good upset position, but it's going to be tough to win still. That being said, I'm going to go with Texas. If Mississippi State wins, it's going to sound some alarms for Texas. It's going to just continue what's been a very frustrating season. TCU at West Virginia. TCU is a 15.5-point favorite, and their offense continues to play at a high level. The defense, though, not as much. Now, they might have a little bit more success playing against West Virginia. So for that reason, I'm going to go with TCU. I think they're going to be able to put up points, and West Virginia is going to struggle. Wisconsin at Oregon. If Oregon can put up 750 yards and 56 points against Rutgers, imagine what they can do against a Wisconsin team that is all but done for the rest of the year. Luke Fickell still somehow has a job. I'm not entirely sure what he's going to do against the rest of the competition that's going to convince this Wisconsin administration that he is the future, but he still has a job. We'll see what happens. If Oregon just absolutely thrashes them, which is probably going to happen, maybe that changes. There's not much really to discuss here. Oregon is going to win this game. Stanford coming off of that big upset win over Florida State, playing Miami, who just got upset by Louisville. Now, Miami's a 30.5-point favorite. They're playing at home. They're going to get right. They're going to bounce back. Miami's going to win probably by a lot as well. Texas A&M and LSU, and this is going to be a really interesting one because Texas A&M is a 2.5-point favorite, but they're going on the road against an LSU defense that has been a big reason for their success. They're coming off a tough loss to Vanderbilt, and they're looking to bounce back at home. Now, Texas A&M has been really good. They had a tough, close game against Arkansas last week. They're looking to kind of brush that off and win what should be a very different game at LSU. Probably not as high scoring. The offense is going to have a little bit of a tougher time putting up points, but their defense should be able to get right against an LSU offense that has not had a ton of success. But this is going to be tough. I think LSU is looking to get a win that they desperately need, and Texas A&M looks to continue that momentum. If you're looking for a night game that's going to be a close one and super entertaining, this is going to be the game to watch. I'm going with Texas A&M though. I don't really trust LSU to win this one unless they're able to keep it low scoring and just find ways to get a turnover or two. I'm going to trust Texas A&M right now more than I trust LSU. Boston College at Louisville. Now, Louisville has to be aware of the letdown game here. They just beat Miami. They're 23.5-point favorites. The one thing is that if this game was at Boston College, I'd be a little bit more concerned. They're playing at home. They should be able to handle Boston College, even though this offense for Boston College has been better than I think people realize. I think that Louisville is going to be able to take care of things. Chris Bell has been absolutely phenomenal to watch, and they're going to make sure that they don't have a letdown game. Coming into the year, Michigan and Michigan State hope to be in better places than they are right now. I think Michigan anticipated that they could be a contender in the Big Ten, and while they're not necessarily too far away from that, they're just not that contender they thought they'd be. Michigan State thought they'd be better than they were. There are talks about Jonathan Smith potentially being fired. This is a massive opportunity for them here. A rivalry game. They're 14.5-point underdogs. I don't think that's going to change anything. I'm going to go with Michigan to win this one here. Colorado State just fired Jay Norvell, and they're playing their first game without him on the road against Wyoming, who are 6.5-point favorites. I'm very curious how Colorado State is going to play in this one. It's a road game. You just fired your head coach. I don't necessarily know if they're going to play with a ton of passion. I don't know if they're going to play with an intensity. Playing at Wyoming is a difficult task. There's not a ton of energy that you can create on your own, and you're going to have to just embrace that this is going to be difficult. So picking this one, we're going to go with Wyoming. I don't necessarily know that Colorado State has something that we didn't see already, so I'm going to pick the Cowboys to win this one. Tennessee at Kentucky. Tennessee is a 9.5-point favorite, and even though Kentucky kept things close against Texas last week, Tennessee is just too tough. Their offense has too many explosive players, too many dangerous weapons to slow down. And even though, like I said, Kentucky, even though they came up short against Texas, they played really well at times. They're going to have a tough time stopping this Tennessee team. The Volunteers are going to win by quite a bit. Houston at Arizona State. Arizona State is an 8.5-point favorite. They're coming off of a big win over Texas Tech. Sam Leavitt was healthy. He looked really good. Houston only has one loss, but this is a very different test than they've seen before. I don't know if they have an answer for Jordan Tyson at wide receiver. Sam Leavitt is a dual threat that could provide a ton of issues for this Houston team. Arizona State is going to win this game. There's not really a question about that in my mind. Houston is much better, but Arizona State's going to come out on top. Colorado at Utah. Utah is a 14.5-point favorite. They're coming off the loss to BYU, so they're looking to bounce back. Colorado, kind of a forgotten team in the Big 12 right now. They're capable of pulling off a surprise, but I think playing at night at Utah is going to be a very difficult task, especially against a motivated Utah team that is coming off a tough loss. I am very curious to see how Colorado handles this environment, how Caden Salter plays at quarterback, and how they stop Devin Dampier. This offense for Utah is very difficult to stop, and unless you have a defense like a BYU or Texas Tech, it's going to be a challenge. I'm going with Utah to win this game. I don't really have any concerns about them having another letdown against a Colorado team like this, so I'm going to go with the Utes there. But that is it for week 9. Who do you think is going to, and what are your predictions for the week? Make sure you comment them below. As always, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.